Lesson 2, Reading 1. Why can I easily wash soap off of my hands with water? Getting ready. Have you ever tried to wash your hands with butter? You probably have not, because butter does not help make your hands clean. Try it. Rub a small amount of butter, vegetable shortening, or lard on your hands and try to rinse your hands with water. The fats make your hands slippery, but they do not rinse off easily. This reading will help you understand why you can rinse soap off your hands with water, but you cannot rinse fats off with water. You will have an opportunity to explain this later in the reading. Solubility. What does it mean for a substance to be soluble? If you sprinkle a little salt into a glass of water and stir, the salt seems to disappear. Instead of seeing pieces of salt in the water, you see cloudy salt water. You do not see the grains of salt because salt dissolves in water. Scientists say the salt is soluble in water. However, salt does not dissolve in all liquids. When you determine if a substance is soluble in a liquid, you are identifying another property of the substance. The property is called solubility. Solubility is a capacity of one substance to dissolve in a liquid substance. The substance salt is soluble in water. Solubility in water is a property of salt. Remember that substances have properties that are always the same for that substance. If solubility in water is a property of salt, then it must always be true of salt. You will read more about this in the following sections. When describing solubility, it is important to name the two substances. The substance being tested, salt, and the liquid substance it is being tested in, water. No one would say that salt is always soluble. Is salt soluble in milk, in cooking oil, in orange juice? Whether or not a substance is soluble depends on the substance and the liquid substance it is being tested in. You always have to name both of them to describe the substance's solubility. A correct way to describe the solubility of salt is to say salt is soluble in water. Salt is not soluble in oil. If you sprinkle salt in a glass of oil, it will not dissolve. Embedded text-dependent question. What do you think would happen if you have a very small amount of water in a glass and you filled the glass with salt? Would the salt dissolve? Give reasons for your answer. In fact, only some of the salt would actually dissolve, and then the water would not be able to dissolve any more salt. The substance salt is always soluble in water, but you cannot dissolve a lot of salt in a small amount of water. If possible, try this at home to check it out for yourself. The fact that some of the salt would dissolve in water is evidence that salt is soluble in water. Water can dissolve many substances, but not all substances are soluble in water. For example, aluminum does not dissolve in water. That is why you might see empty soda cans at the bottom of a lake or a river. The substance aluminum is not soluble in water. Where does a substance go when it dissolves? If you stir sugar into a glass of iced tea, the sugar will look like it has disappeared. You know the sugar is still there because the tea tastes sweet. This is an interesting fact about solubility. When a substance is soluble, it might look like it disappears in the liquid, but the substance is still there. The substance breaks up into very small pieces that are too small for you to see. Sugar is soluble in water, and a glass of iced tea is mostly made of water. The particles that make up the solid sugar move away from each other and mix with the particles of the water. Iced tea is another example of a mixture. It is a mixture of water and tea. Sweetened iced tea is a mixture of water, tea, and sugar. Embedded text-dependent question. In Lesson 1, you read that toothbrush bristles are made of nylon. Would you use a toothbrush with nylon bristles if nylon were soluble in water? Explain your ideas. Not all substances are soluble in water. You have learned that solubility is another property of substances. Some substances are soluble in water, but others are not. Some substances are soluble in oil or other liquids, and other substances are not. Solubility can help you better describe what substances are and how they can be used. Have you ever had something greasy on your hands that was difficult to wash off? One example is grease from working on machines or engines. Another example is cooking oil or butter. Embedded text-dependent question. Now that you have learned about solubility, how can you explain why greasy substances are difficult to wash off? You have learned that some ways of describing substances are not properties like mass, volume, shape, and texture. You have now learned about solubility. Soon you will learn about other properties. Remember, properties help scientists describe substances, identify substances, and tell samples of different substances apart. These are two lists of what you have learned so far, with the property solubility now added. Embedded text-dependent question. How do you know if something is a property or not?